Hi there, my name is Raina and I am a professional astrologer and tarot card reader. I post videos on YouTube on these topics, and I wanted to do a tarot tutorial series on the major arcana. Now initially when I was going to do this, I wanted to get into the symbolism of the cards. And I found that it wasn't really that easy to access that because it seems like it's more speculation than anything. And so I've kind of just altered it to talk about the meanings of the cards. And I have like a selection of my personal decks here that I have in my collection. And I want to show you some of the different ways that each of these major arcana cards is depicted. I'm going to be doing each major arcana card separately because I think that it will be good to just focus on one card at a time. This is not going to be a series on how to read tarot cards, and the reason for that is that I'm self-taught. I don't employ any rituals when I do my readings, and so it'd be kind of hard for me to just sit down and tell you how to read cards. I think that it's like telling somebody how to be an artist. It's one of those things that you either got it or you don't. And yes, of course, you can find things online very easily on different methods that people use. I read them myself and it didn't resonate with me to do things like that. I'm not really somebody that is that interested in rituals, doing things before I do a reading, a tarot reading. And yet I don't have any problem with people that do that. I've seen some very impressive stuff, using feathers and using there's things that they do, and if that feels genuine for you, then that's what you should do. For me, it wouldn't be coming from my heart, so I don't approach it like that. And also, some people are laying out cards and laying out spreads, and they are just really not necessarily focusing on the literal meaning of the card. It's just like a jumping off point for their own psychic abilities. I don't bill myself as a psychic. I'm really somebody who believes that these tools can help us, that they are symbolic. I do believe in synchronicity, so if I get a certain card that just happens to connect to something going on in my personal life, I think how cool is that? That is showing that there's something at play that is beyond the rational mind. So it's not about being too into the woo aspect, nor is it about being too left-brained or linear. But a nice combination is how I do things. And so I did get people asking me if I teach, and I don't, or do I have some kind of program, or I don't know. So I was actually thinking about that myself, but people were asking me if I teach others how to do the tarot, and I'm like, no, I don't. But I had already wanted to do something along these lines. I'm just doing something that is much more grounded than what I had initially intended, because I don't think I would have been able to really sustain a video for very long trying to talk about symbolism. But I will, I've already written down the one for the Fool. This is the first card. And supposedly there are decks where the Fool is in the position of the last card. So instead of the World, we have the Fool as the last card. And I've never run across a deck like that, so I'll just have to take their word for it. If you're somebody who is interested in reading tarot cards, the one piece of advice that I would give you is to become a student of metaphysics. Don't just stop at the tarot. Don't just memorize what each card represents so that you can, make a good show of things. But really learn about astrology, numerology, how it's all connected, because it's all connected. I mean, it's all within the tarot. It's all connected to the tarot. And also just in general, it's always good to be the kind of person who's very philosophical and who is interested in exploring the true meaning of life. Yes, there are people who they just want to know what's quote-unquote going to happen. But if you're going to be a reader, it's important that you impress upon people their personal responsibility to life, to their own soul's development, and not just being passive and waiting for life to happen to them. So this is the first card that I'm going to be talking about. The major arcanum is our series of 22 cards, and it's called the Fool's Journey because it takes the fool into different areas of life. So that is trying to show you that, first you have the Fool, then you have the Magician card, which is the number 1 card. So the Fool is experiencing these different things in life. And kind of like you would say with the astrological wheel, where there are 12 houses of, it's kind of like 12 stations in life. And different things like that, different models that look at life as a journey, as a cycle. And I'm going to be talking about the numerology, I'm going to be talking about the planetary influence, and maybe, I think I've written down a couple of things about the actual symbols in the card. But I'm also going to be bringing in my own ideas with it. So that's definitely a part of this. And one of the first things I'm going to do is compare the images of the cards and then get into the nitty-gritty. But I just wanted to say that I feel like it's important that when you're looking at these cards, apply them to your life and apply them to a client's life if you want to do this professionally. Or if you are doing it for a friend, they call that the querent, the person who's inquiring about something and requesting a reading. So whether it's a friend or a client, bringing it into a practical place. So it's not abstract. There's no, true value beyond mental stimulation to be talking about abstract things in this context when you're trying to sort things out. So let's start by kind of examining these cards, and I'm going to start with the illustration by Pamela Coleman Smith, and this is the Rider-Waite deck. This particular deck is there's the Radiant Tarot, and I do have that one. I'm just going to grab, I don't know if I have the Fool, but I'll show you the Magician card because I just happen to have this. Now, if you compare the kind of colors and things, I mean, it had that background. I prefer this one. Some people like the Radiant Tarot. They think that everything is more bold, but I I like this. I think it's still bright, still vibrant. It's not washed out, but it is very, I don't know, it just has a bit of restraint to it. Pamela Coleman Smith was the illustrator. I think she died penniless, which always touches me because her illustrations are immortal. They've been immortalized. And the Rider-Waite combination there, the people that, I forgot what Waite's first name was. But this is the deck that we call the go-to deck, because I think, if you have ever worked with decks and you're a beginner, it's helpful to have this evocative type of illustration because it allows for more understanding on a very obvious basis, not having to work too hard to figure out what the meaning of the card is. And especially if you've tried to memorize things and you are like stuck for a second, that it jogs your memory and you're like, oh yeah, that's what it represents, the Fool card. I know when I first started, I was like, okay, am I going to be able to press record and actually remember this? And when I first started on YouTube, I had taken a crash course on the tarot because, self-taught, because I was planning just to do astrology. And I quickly realized that the tarot was very popular. It's not to say that astrology isn't popular, it is, but the tarot has connections to people from all over the world in a very visceral way. So I wanted to get on board with that, and so I already knew about the tarot, and I already had been doing it for myself and for my partner for years, but I hadn't memorized the meanings of each card. And when I first started, I didn't even film readings like I'm doing now. I got away with that for I would say 10 months. And then I said to myself, okay, now you have to buy a camera because you can't just keep showing the pictures of the cards that you picked. That's not going to be good enough. So then I went to the next level. So I'm going to just keep showing you these pictures. Now that showed a person, let's review. I didn't really describe what the scene was. It shows a person who's looking up at the heavens, is not looking at the fact that, if we can call it a he, that his body is headed very close to the edge of a cliff, and he's holding a very small knapsack and a white rose, or a white flower, and his dog is white, and his dog is kind of in a playful stance, and the sun is prominent there, and the background is yellow. Now, yellow is a color, I wanted to say this, yellow is a color of joy. You think of Leo, the fire sign that is ruled by the sun, and what the sun represents. The sun card in the tarot. But in the chakra system, the third chakra is yellow, is the color yellow. And in auras, when you see the color yellow or gold, that is showing the third chakra being part of it. Actually, when I went to one of those psychic fairs and the lady took my aura photograph, and I had this gold or this, yellow that was really mixed in with green and blue. It was a very interesting combination. And yellow, in regards to the third chakra, deals with the power chakra, okay? So it deals with your sense of, I would say also your sense of self, okay? Which is very interesting. And I don't even know if that's true. I'd have to look back, but I'm just thinking in terms of the color, and I'm thinking in terms of, because the sun is your identity in astrology. So I'm imagining that there is some correlation there. But the third chakra, when it comes to power, is, do you feel empowered in life? Or do you feel like you are under somebody else's control? And so you can have an underactive third chakra, and that will mean that you're not exhibiting those traits associated with the third chakra. And you can have an overactive one where you are imposing your will on other people. Because the third chakra is also characterized by the will, which is that which allows us to stand firm if we're trying to accomplish something. You know, and the third house would be your accomplishments, your success. And so for the Fool, without knowing what the background represents, I would say it represents a certain, you know, sense of self-empowerment. And yet, the very fact that he's called the Fool can mean that others are not necessarily respecting his choices. And what is his choice right now? His choice is to embark on a new journey. The 0 is the symbol of pure potential. 0 point. The chance to start over with a totally clean slate. And so maybe that's what is feeling so empowering to him. The fact that he doesn't have to answer to someone, and that he is, he even has yellow boots. And that he is trusting in the universe. Because that's the other thing too, is that the Fool is not somebody who is trying to control things. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't even know that he's about to walk off a cliff. That's how, you know, up in the clouds he's in. And I'm sorry to keep, I should just hold this in my hand for a little bit. So let's look at some of the symbolism on the Rider-Waite Pamela Coleman version. He's got a knapsack. It's very small, so he's not taking very much with him. Minimalism. That means that he feels a sense of freedom because he doesn't have a heavy load. This can also be his psychological state is very light. He's not weighed down by all the memories of the past and clinging to the past. He's got a white rose, or I keep calling it a rose, a white flower. So white can symbolize purity, and his dog is also white. Why is he looking at heaven? Because he's trusting the universe. The universe isn't below his feet. The universe is where God resides. He's trusting God. He's letting go and letting God. And he's willing, he's up for that. He's up for that adventure. Let's look at the other cards. This is the Druid Craft deck, and I ordered it because they said it was very faithful to Rider-Waite. Now in this deck, they have a black dog. And in this one, I guess it's a woman in this particular deck. She's not looking upwards, she's looking ahead. And I like that because there is an element of forward movement. But she's not looking below at her feet. She's still trusting that when she takes a step, it's like when they say the universe, jump and the universe will provide a net. So that's kind of what she's doing. She's kind of embarking on this journey, zero. She doesn't know what's going to happen. It's a blank slate, but she's trusting that everything's going to turn out all right. This is the Morgan Greer deck with the nice background. Now this one is also supposed to be faithful to the Rider-Waite Pamela Coleman. And this one, again, is a very small knapsack, and the white dog and the white flower. And in this one we can't see, where the cliff is or anything like that. But the person is looking straight ahead, is not looking upwards, but just straight ahead. So kind of like on this adventure and being willing to, leave the past behind, looking ahead. This is the Wild Unknown Tarot that I have been doing readings from time to time, and some of the pictures are very, a little gruesome, but they're beautiful illustrations, pen and ink. Sometimes black and white, sometimes a splash of color or total color, and this is the Fool. Now this is an example of a deck where if you didn't know much about the tarot and you just saw this card, you might be stumped as to what is going on. Now we see this is a duckling or a little, I guess it's a duckling, isn't it? And so it is indicating the newness. It is zero, and it is perched on a branch, kind of like being perched on a precipice, like the other versions, where it's like one false move and you're going to take a fall. So there's always that sense of danger because the person, or in this case, the little duckling, doesn't know, or bird, I hope I'm not embarrassing myself, doesn't know what is ahead. They just have this little narrow place that they are perched for the time being. After a while they will be exploring and they will see things being revealed to them. Although this deck does show it in a more narrow way, whereas the other decks there's a sense of expansiveness, a sense of adventure. And I think with the Wild Unknown Tarot, it's more of the tentative nature. When you're starting out and you're like, okay, what if I fall? What if I fail? And that can really be uncomfortable for some people, especially if they're a sign that's a lot more cautious, like a Cancer or a Taurus. There are certain signs that are apprehensive about new beginnings, and certain signs that embrace it, like a Gemini or an Aries.